My name is Tom Tresser, and I'm a volunteer with the Civic Lab, an organization that is about innovation and collaboration, education for social change and civic engagement. We're located on the west side, in the West Loop. We invite you to come by 114 North Aberdeen and visit with us. This is a meeting here tonight to talk about TIFs, but it's also much bigger than that. And first of all, I want to say thank you to David and to the minister of this church. I have a personal note to you, sir. I run for office a couple of years ago. I know how hard it is. So it's a sacrifice when you stand for office. It means you can't be with your family, you can't be with your loved ones, you can't do the things that you might want to do because you're trying to serve. So a round of applause for the candidate because he put himself out there for you. That is a beautiful thing. And it's also been my experience that leadership starts with showing up. And so give yourselves a round of applause for showing up here tonight. And you could be home watching, I don't know, Dancing with the Stars or whatever. But no, you're here. You're here to get some knowledge and to act on it, all right? So let's talk TIFs, shall we? The TIF Illumination Project has been going now for just 2 years, starting tomorrow. This is the 32nd meeting that we've done. 31 meetings like this before tonight with good people like yourself sitting in chairs just like this, trying to figure out what the heck is tax increment financing, why should I care about it, and how does it fit into the bigger picture? How does it fit into the bigger picture? So I'm going to ask you to think about a few things as we go through our work tonight. The first question is, what is a city for? What is a city for? Okay? Another way to ask that question is, who plans what for who? Who plans what for who? When you hear the word community development, be suspicious. When you hear the word, we need to make Chicago a world-class city, and then they put the Olympics on you, or build another Ferris wheel down at Navy Pier, be suspicious. So ask yourself the question, who plans what for who? And then you have to ask yourself the question, what happens to our tax dollars? What is the best use of the hard-earned dollars that you earn and put into the system? And who gets to call the shots? Those are the big things that I think that are underneath the work that I do, and hopefully we'll share with you tonight. All right, tax increment financing. How does it work? It is a program created by the city, so it is always run by the city. It's a state law. Every city runs it in their own way. So the TIFs that we create here in Chicago don't go to Evanston, and the TIFs created in Cicero don't come to us. So it's a city thing. And in the city of Chicago, it is the Department of Planning and Development, Commissioner Andrew Mooney, who of course serves at the pleasure of the mayor. The idea was that in certain communities that have trouble, the normal development process of building stuff is short-circuited. And then we get into this world called blight. And I have to say, we could stop here and spend the rest of the night discussing who blighted who. You follow me? Right? In Chicago, with its long history of redlining, exclusionary practices, blockbusting, and predatory lending that goes up to this very day, it's a conversation that needs to be had as to this word blight. I think it's a loaded word, but it is the word that is in the statute, so we have to deal with it. But it goes something like this. Say I'm a developer and I want to build a little strip mall, right? With a sundry store and a dry cleaner, something like that, in this little strip mall, right? And I want to do it down on 59th Street or whatever, you know, right in the area. And I go to the bank and I say, I need to build this little mall, and it's going to be about a $4 million project. You know, it's got the parking lot and the 7 storefronts and whatnot. And they say, Tom, you know, that community is, you know, it's troubled. You know, if you put that store there, it's not going to succeed. Why? Well, because the people are going to steal from you, or they're too poor, or whatever. This blight thing, meaning if we lend you this money, it's at risk, so we're going to have to give you a higher rate than if it were in another community. So, sure, go ahead and build your mall, but it's going to cost you 40 points on your loan. So, well, I can't make that work. Is there any way, can I get some help somewhere? And the city says, yes, we can help you, and we can give you some money so you can do your thing, which you privately own, because the community will benefit if we have this little mall with the sundry store and the dry cleaners. Jobs will be created, you'll be paying property taxes, so we have a thing called tax increment financing that we will create for you. And remember that TIFs can only be used for construction, mostly. So there is some provision for non-construction, but the main purpose is to build stuff that produces property taxes and creates jobs. So, if there is no TIF district currently in this imaginary scenario, one can be created for me. Now this right here is the Howard Paulina TIF district that was on the north side of the city. It's no longer there, but what happens is they draw the boundaries, right? And they count up all the properties inside the boundaries, and say there's 1,000 properties in this area, and say that those properties have given off, say, $1,000 in property taxes. That's what we start with. So here's the first word to remember, and that is the word the base. That $1,000 that exists right now as we begin our work, that stays frozen. Now, an aside, who can tell me what agencies of government are funded by property taxes? What agencies of government are funded by property taxes? Parks, yes. Schools. Libraries, yeah. There are a few more. He said parks. We got police, fire. We have police and fire. So the city of Chicago is the recipient of property taxes, the county of Cook, the water reclamation district, and the city colleges. So as we started with a comment that the gentleman said, Mr. Moore said, we don't have any trouble paying our taxes to go to these things. That's the deal, right? You live in a great city, there's bills to pay, and in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, we rely very heavily on property taxes, especially for public education. So who gets the most of your property taxes? What of those agencies get the most? The schools. It's about 56 cents of the dollar. So you pay $1 of tax, and this 56 cents of that is supposed to go to the Board of Ed to do their thing. Therefore, we must be very mindful of anything that takes $1 of property tax off the table. Okay? If $1 of property tax goes missing, there are consequences. So we need to keep that in our minds most foremost. Now, even if you are a renter and you say, look, I don't own property, what does all that to do with me? You're still paying because you pay to your owner and he or she then pays their bills. So you're still in the system. And more than that, I would say if anybody uses public education or uses the buses or goes to the library or, goes into the park or the beach, you are still consuming public services if you rely on the police or fire or any of these things that we're speaking of. You're in the game. This matters to you. This is for everyone, whether you live in a TIF district or not. All right, back to our example. So we have now this TIF district. We've established that there's $1,000 of property taxes generated at the start of this game. Now, I build my little project. Now we have 1,001 properties. Now it's a few years later, other people are building, new things are happening, property values are rising. Here's the thing, every penny above that $1,000 that we spoke of is collected by the TIF district. That's the increment. You with me? The $1,000 that we are saying is the base. That goes to these units of government that you just named. The schools, the libraries, etc. But that stays flat for 23 years. Doesn't matter if there's inflation, doesn't matter if there's an earthquake or an asteroid hits us, that's flat. And every penny above that is captured by the TIF district. It looks like fuel by property taxes, they're only for building stuff. The TIF money is handcuffed, which means that it's supposed to be used in the TIF district that is collected. So those are some of the key points. This chart tries to show that relationship. There's the base for 23 years. You see it's flat. This is the increment. Another way to think about this diagram is this. This money that is collected and used by the city government and local agencies, that's for us. This is for the mayor. Right? Wow. This is the mayor. And in some places in the city, this right here is 90% of all the taxes collected in the TIF district. Right, so it's a big number. We're going to get to just how big this is in a second. But that essentially is how TIFs work. So that when you hear the word increment, this is what they're speaking of. The money, every penny over that base. And in the case of my little example, we imagine that this was $1,000, you know. So back in year 0, when the TIF was first created, all those properties were contributing $1,000 to the operations of the city and the county. 23 years later, that's a generation, right? I mean, that's, you know, it's like in the Bible, that's a generation, right? It's still the same. Hasn't changed. All right. That's the basics. Now, this just reminds us of that point. The 56 cents of the dollar goes to the public schools. 18 cents to the city. And you see, so all this, that's your base. Good? Okay. Now, this thing called blight, this is where the train starts to go off the tracks. There is a statute that outlines the definition of blight, and it's about 13 features, and in order to qualify to get the TIF money, you have to satisfy 5 of them. 5 of the 13 qualities. And they seem common sense, like code violations, age of property, obsolescence, excessive vacancies, etc. That sounds like it makes sense, except this is some blighted areas. LaSalle Street, so blighted, oh my God. The TIF down there took in almost $1 billion. Halsted and Monroe in Greektown, Mariano's Grocery, $7 million. The company that owns Mariano's Roundies had $3 billion in revenue. So how is this a blighted area? I mean, you know, it's bustling. With the community where I live, in Lincoln Park, there's this is the North Avenue subway stop at Clybourne. This building right back here is Grocers Auto. They got $8.5 million in TIF money. Here's an Apple store. Holy Christ, how blight is that? I can't even look at it, it's so blighted. Across the street is Charles Schwab stock market store, Steppenwolf, the Tony Award-winning theater. You get the picture? Well, the city of Chicago has warped and has stretched the definition of blight to include virtually anything and anywhere. So that's one of the first things that we notice about this program. Now, how do TIFs get created? Oh boy, people want to know about that. Can we figure this thing out? That's the flow chart of the authority and you know, who says what when. But look, this is Chicago. It's this guy. Yes, it is. It's what he wants. If he wants a TIF, he'll get one. If he doesn't want a TIF, you won't get one. If your alderman is in tight with the mayor and he wants a TIF or she wants a TIF, you'll get one. If you don't want a TIF and the alderman who is in tight with the mayor wants one, you'll get one. Okay? This is statues in the south end of Grand Park. I don't know if you see that. They have no heads. So the mayor is giving the aldermen their marching orders, telling them where to go and what to do. Now, it's not my opinion that this is a study done by a great professor named Dick Simpson at UI. He's been studying this for 30 years. The aldermen we have with us now are the most compliant, the most rubber stampy in history. In history, since records were kept. They vote with this mayor on the order of 90%. Your alderman, right here, 100%. 100%. On contested issues, things where it makes a difference. Now look, nobody's right or wrong 100% of the time. I even agree with Ron sometimes, you know. But 100%? Well, I point this out to you just as if you don't like what you hear tonight, if you don't like this, you got to make some change. You got to make some change because they are not going to change. Left to their own devices, you have to make the change. All right. TIFs have run them up. You know, it's that monster movie. You know, the guy creates the monster and he thinks he's going to control it. You know, then it bursts his chains and it starts trampling the village. You know, you ever see those movies? That's what TIFs have. So we've got 154 TIFs in the city of Chicago. 154. 30% of the land mass of the city of Chicago is in one of these bad boys. No city in America comes close. No city. We're number one. Yay. 154 TIFs in the city of Chicago. In the last year, we counted $422 million of your property taxes across the city sucked up by these TIFs. That's almost $500 million, ladies and gentlemen. And this has been consistent for the last 5 or 6 years. So even in a down economy, Chicago is robust enough. Our properties, you know, have value that are being vacuum cleaned in this way to the tune of almost $1 billion every 2 years. Now, since TIFs were created back in 1986 by the late Mayor Washington, they had taken $6 billion. $6 billion. Now, it's a fair question to ask, where did that money go? Where's it at? Well, that's what the TIF Illumination Project has been dedicated to these last 2 years. We have 100 volunteers who have been working tirelessly to do the research that we're placing before you now. So let's have a round of applause for them, because they are working in secret and quiet, you know, in the privacy of their homes, doing this research so that I can stand here and look like I know what I'm talking about. $6 billion since 1986. And here's, as I show, you know, this is the map of all the TIFs, and look how they touch. You see how that goes? There's a reason for that. I said that originally the idea is that TIF money is supposed to be spent in the area that it's collected, except when it's not. They can move money around as long as the TIFs touch. Wow. And that's called porting, transporting. And so money can move from hither to thither, and we tracked $140 million that was moved around in 2013 from one TIF to another, and there's nobody who can tell you really why, you know, except the insiders, for projects that, you know, that wanted to get done. So there's the Godzilla monster stomping on, you know, Chicago, Mr. TIF. Now I'm going to tell you something that I think is probably the most shocking finding that we've done in our work. And it goes back to another key question that I want to raise for you, and that's already been asked by our speakers. And the question is, are we broke?
No.
Are we broke?
No.
Do you believe it when they say we're broke?
No.
Okay. Well, you're right to be skeptical, and I'm going to show you why. The TIF Illumination Project looked at all the annual reports of these TIF districts. So every TIF has a little report that's about 34 pages, and it's got like a checkbook. So our accountant here will know, you know, how you read your books, and, you know, and everybody here who manages your own accounts for your businesses, your home, you know, you start your year with a balance, you have your expenses and your income. Hopefully at the end of the year you have more, you know, than you started at the end of the year. But you have something in your checking account that gives you a record. And the same thing for Mr. TIF. So there's 154 TIFs, we opened up 154 reports, extracted information, put it on a spreadsheet. Now this is something you will not find on the city's website, by the way. No matter what they say about transparency, this is something they do not want you to know. And so, are you all sitting down? Yeah. So we're sitting down. So, at the end of 2013, this is how much money was in the TIF accounts.
Wow.
Yes. Let the record show a collective gasp has gone up from the crowd. $1.71 billion, ladies and gentlemen, in property taxes sitting somewhere in some accounts. Now, would you be offended if it was held by the Bank of America? You wouldn't be surprised, but would you be offended? Some of us wouldn't be offended. They're criminals, and they're already, you know, they're involved in quick takes and all kinds of, you know, seedy businesses. So we're not sure who's holding this money. We're not sure under what you know, circumstances. Are we getting a good interest rate, or is it yet another sweetheart deal? The teachers union pointed out these strange bonds that we've entered into where we're paying and paying and paying and paying. We can't seem to get out of it. Is this another example of that? We don't know. $1.71 billion. These are not magic beans. These are your property tax dollars. And remember, this country got started over taxes. Remember, we got all mad about taxation without representation. We went to war. We went to war. Maybe it's time to get busy. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's time to get that anger again, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. All right, continuing on. It's a big deal across the entire state. So while we have our problems here in Chicago, we're not alone. There are 549 other municipalities in our great state that are facing the same issue. So we've got 154 TIFs, but there's 1,220 across the entire state. And since TIFs came to the state of Illinois, they've taken $14 billion. So now you can ask yourself the question about the state as well. Is the state broke? Right? If they're not being fair with us, if they're not being straight with us at the city level, are they being straight with us at the state level?
No.
Is this a sham that you're being perpetrated on with all this nonsense with pensions, and we can't pay these people who've worked their entire lives and now we're going to change the deal on them? There's no other way because we're broke. I don't know. Our research seems to indicate otherwise. And oh my God, he says I could have had a V8. All right, to sum up so far. TIFs equal your property tax dollars. The increment is what is collected by that TIF district. It's like a black box that collects it. It's like, it takes it off the top, by the way. Think of it like Vegas. You know, the mob skims in Vegas, you've heard of that? So you pay your bill to the city, and then the TIF reaches in there and grabs off the top. Off the top of it. And if you live in a TIF district now, for the first time, you can actually see this on your property tax bill. Up until this summer, it wasn't the case. Your bills were lying to you, but we helped change that. It's run by the city. It lasts 23 years. It's supposed to satisfy the blight and the but-for condition. That is to say, but for this public money, this project could not have been built. But I refer you back to Mariano's on the corner of Halsted and Monroe. You're meaning to tell me that you couldn't get a commercial loan for that project because it was a blighted community. Across the street, they built the Dominic's, the old-fashioned way. You know, they went to the bank and got a loan. They're very hard to track, and they're a very, very big deal here in the city and in Illinois. Okay, that's the big picture, but we're here to talk about your community, in particular, the 17th Ward. So let's zoom in, shall we? The 17th Ward, we're going to look at the new map. So the information I'm telling you is reflected by the new ward boundaries. These are the 6 TIFs that are relevant to you. They are the 79th Street corridor, the Greater Southwest Industrial TIF, the Englewood Neighborhood TIF, the 79th Street Southwest Highway, 69th Street and Ashland, and 79th and Vincennes.